welcome to season 4, that's right, of the Link Up. Oh, it's been a while since we've seen each other on the Link Up. It's nice to have you in company. Well, I'm not going to start the Link Up the way we usually do, because right now we have our first guest, His Excellency Chad Blackman, and we have to give him enough time to get to his UNCTAD meeting. So Ambassador Blackman, of course, is the ambassador and permanent representative of Barbados to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva. And it's really great to see you, Ambassador. I hope all's well.
Great to see you too.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, at this time, UNCTAD, we're looking at, I see here 15 days, 14 hours, 19 minutes, and 17 seconds. That's how much time we have left. And under the theme in Barbados, from inequality and vulnerability to prosperity for all, how does that shape up under the pandemic known as COVID-19? I'm sure that that has changed everything, because it brings out the inequality, it brings out the vulnerability, and one wonders where then will come prosperity. So let's chat about that. How are we going to deal with UNCTAD and trade and prosperity under COVID-19?
Thank you very much. As you give the countdown towards UNCTAD 15, invariably when this journey started some 2 years ago, when we put in the bid to host now of course it was meant to be an in-person event, but of course due to COVID we've now had to have it virtually by and large. But because of that, as you rightly said, of those inequalities and inequalities that we face even before COVID existed, they've now become even more glaring and even worse than ever before. And because of that, the conference therefore is very, very important, not just for CARICOM, not just for small and developing states, but the entire world, and in particular developing countries. UNCTAD, as you may know, and for of the audience, UNCTAD as the organization with the sole mandate within the UN to treat the issue and development. Look at the issues of vulnerabilities. Take, for example, in countries in the region or countries in the Pacific, who are in many respects driven by tourism. We've seen the dislocation over the last year and a half, where our tourism receipts have gone from what they were before down to very negligible numbers. And that has had an impact on our livelihoods, our economy, our foreign reserves, and therefore the ability to be able to grow, to prosper, has been impaired in many respects. So then when you take a step back to look to see what are the cogs within the international system that all address and help us to realign where we are and moving forward. Therefore, UNCTAD 15 serves as an excellent starting point for the international community to do so. When you look at issues relative to finance, you ask yourself, what is there within the international economic architecture that helps countries to be able to? Now, to give you a very tangible example, countries are classified by the World Bank according to the GDP. So a country may be very small physically, but it may also have a small population, and you deal wealth by that population, and therefore you are classified according to that. Now, in Barbados' circumstances and many countries in the region, when we have natural disasters or external shocks, as we've had to endure recently and continue to do so, we therefore, because of that classification, cannot go on and receive concessionary finance. Because of that, there are larger countries who have larger pools of resources at their disposal and are able to borrow, or not only borrow, but to receive those concessionary tools. For UNCTAD serves as that starting point of a global book of the international architecture for development. Is it equitable? Is it fit for purpose for the 21st century real face? As I said, even before COVID-19. Now, we've also seen issues with regards to climate change. Climate change is at the forefront of our minds. Every year, our region with the issues relative to natural disasters, whether it be floods, whether it be hurricanes, and all of the gains that we've made over decades can be gone in as little a minute because of that. And therefore, whilst we're trying to develop, whilst we have different sets of potentials, the vulnerability is exposed. So therefore, the issue of resilience, and therefore, how do you get the organizations, the international communities, to relook and retool to see how can developing countries have the ability to build their capacities, that whilst external shocks may come, because let's not fool ourselves, at some point in time, exogenous shocks, also known as external shocks, will come. But the ability of a country to respond to that is going to be critical. And these things are wrapped up in our trade rules, our development frameworks, and now is a time to do that. And I really want to say this to the audience. 15 declaration that will be coming out is not just to set the work program for UNCTAD for another 4 years. This is the first UN conference outside of the General Assembly since COVID-19 has taken place in the entire world. And therefore, Barbados will be at the forefront of dealing amongst the international community what the new world will look like. How do we build forward better? Or some people say build back better. What does that look like? How do we ensure that issues relative to stability are at the forefront? How do we ensure that our manufacturers can compete across the world and ensuring that their goods and services can be entered into markets in circumstances where we've seen a shift sometimes in terms of resources? And these are the things that we have to confront. But also at the forefront of the agenda is issues of gender. How do we ensure that our young women and across can part in the international development agenda? There's no discrimination based on things relative to a person being a woman. How can they rise to the levels? How do we ensure that the international architecture allows for them to do so? So this conference is really of a number of issues going forward. As I said, we put in a bid as a country to host this even before there was a COVID-19. But the importance of the conference becomes even more now.
Can I heard all of the things that you mentioned in terms of gender and climate change. Climate change is a big one. But in my years of living, my main question now is, does it have teeth? How big is its bite? Who listens? Is it just going to be, setting down and talking, and then in another 4 years, here we are again? Does it have teeth?
You've asked not just for UNCTAD 15, but that part and parcel is really the conversation that the international community has been having and has to have. And I think our government and our Prime Minister has been making point for a very long time. That the time has long passed, not just come, but long passed for us to just be talking. Treaty after treaty, discussion after discussion, conference after conference. The time for action is now. And one way to give a sense of action and purpose to a lot of the things is also to sensitize our people that actions can also deter a lot of what we want to do. So for example, the issue of climate change and behavior. I'll tie it to what you said. You said a very fantastic thing. If we can get our consumers across the world realizing that we are not in our region, for example, or in the Pacific, the countries that are causing the negative impacts of climate change, but it is the global community that has to take a responsibility. And you can get consumers to change so that one, when you purchase goods, they cause less impact to the environment. Then you can start to see the gain. So it's one thing to legislate, or it's one thing to have international discussions, but if there's no the policy framework at national level, and also the behavior of the across the world, driven by an understanding that we're all in this together and we have one planet to save in a very short period of time, you're right. We go another 4 years, 5 years, manageable reality. But history has shown that whenever we have come to a place in our development that we are realizing we're at the point of no return, have a very short window, if possible, change, and only then sometimes that for us to change course. And I think that we are at that moment. And not that COVID-19 has been very tough on us as country developing world. Also an opportunity. It is an opportunity for us to recalibrate, to set a new agenda that is also inclusive of the interests of developing countries, because let's face it, we have to ensure the agenda of the world is fit for purpose for development. That really must go on. I can tell you, given the discussions that are already taking place in Geneva, it manifests in the outcome documents as the conference in a few weeks.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it though, because there are some issues on the table which really and truthfully climate change and in the area of gender, where we see some states within North America coming out with some interesting legislation which in essence are taking away a woman's right to decide on her own body. And those are worrying things which, you know, if allowed to continue, I can see some problems down the road. So I am so sorry that we can only chat for such a short time, but please, I'm asking you if you can spend a longer time with us so that we can thrash this, you know, out and perhaps some of our audience can also say some of the things they would like to see take place in October, brought to the
absolutely.
table.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Peta. And rest assured, as I make myself available to the public.
Well, I'm going to check with you on your diary. We're here on Fridays, so I'll ask you to mark some space for us before October 3rd. But thank you, Ambassador. All the best. And I know that you will speak our issues and concerns loudly and clearly for everyone to hear and fight on our behalf. So you stay safe.
Absolutely. You too.
Thank you. That's His Excellency Ambassador Chad Blackman, and we are definitely going to get him back on the link up when we're going to have a longer time, and you can also have an opportunity to participate and put your concerns on the table, so that when October 3rd begins, you know, we're all speaking from the same page. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to put the link up in its usual way, if I can put it that way. But we'll be right back. Thank you. Well, I certainly hope that Ambassador Blackman got into his meeting on time. So, welcome to Season 4. So much has happened since we last met. Who would have thought that a program created at the beginning of the pandemic would, about 17 months down the road, be back in another surge? Who would have thought? COVID fatigue, perhaps? My COVID fatigue has COVID fatigue. I'm just saying. And yet, here we are, giving God thanks to be alive and hoping that you and your families are safe and well. There's so much to talk about. Vaccines, the tone of people. When I say tone, the way we interact with each other, the way we talk with each other, to each other. Have you ever noticed that there's a I don't want to say a snarkiness, but there's almost like sometimes a sharpness and I know, harsh, acerbic. That's some of the ways that we chat with one another. And sometimes it's so nice just to hear a loud explosion of laughter, a good Bajan cackle out, you know? Sometimes that's really very precious. And some of the things that are on my mind, one thing that I stick up and I put up and it says, do the right thing. You know what the right thing is within your own circumstance. So do the right thing. Be kind. We're all going through a really, really rough patch right now. Really trying time. And so do the right thing. You know, follow your heart. I hope I didn't keep a lot of noise just now, sorry. You know, but be kind. So, coming up, I'm going to chat with a young lady who I have seen grow and develop over the years. Oh my goodness, it's amazing to see. She is a registered clinical psychologist these days. Back in the day, she was with the Young Global Leaders. And this is how she has developed. And today, she's now a young lady with a young family. That's right, she's a mum. And we're talking about registered clinical psychologist Christa Delaney. And Christa, we are so happy to have you join us today, and we are going to chat with you after we take a quick break, just to find out from your perspective and young people traversing these difficult roads these days. A road led by a pandemic, unemployment, frustrations, and I would like to say fear of the unknown. And from that, perhaps we older people also can gather how we can traverse this road as well. And we're going to do that when we come back. Christa is a practicing registered clinical psychologist, and she also is a university lecturer. But today we want to spend time with her in the capacity in her professional life where she focuses on helping clients who have experienced trauma or distress. And she works both locally and regionally. Thank you. Good morning to you, Marcia, and to all of the others who have commented. It's nice to have you in company. She provides support to individuals and also to companies in the areas of mental wellness and project implementation. So let's welcome Christa. So Alleyne, Delaney, nice to have you with us, Christa.
Nice here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Barbados and all viewers.
This has been a difficult road for many, but for our young people, I cannot begin to imagine trying to grow up under these conditions. And I've noted that it has placed a lot of stress, mental and emotional, and in some cases, physical stress. How have you observed this road, Christa, and what are you seeing out there on the ground, and how are you then dealing with it?
Well, when the pandemic first started, I actually was one of the first set of psychologists who went in to help persons, firstly, who had COVID-19, and then families who were affected. And as you said earlier, who would have thought we still here? But the reality is, for young people, it has been quite stressful. When you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're thinking about maybe studying, you're thinking about a job, you're thinking about planning your future, but you haven't been able to because there's nothing sure. And one of the things in the webinars I started doing in the beginning is saying that what we're actually experiencing is grief. We're grieving normalcy. We're grieving the loss of social support. We're grieving the ability to actually plan. And so it's an emotion that we really don't understand. And one of the things that I'm seeing in the practice and I'm seeing in the conversations I'm having is really knowing how to cope. Many of us have been going through life. We're working hard. We're maybe at school. We're just kind of going through life and surviving, but not thriving. And then when COVID happens, then we realize, no, something is wrong. And so our mental health comes into jeopardy, but we don't have the tools sometimes to cope. And so many of the clients that I'm seeing, many of the persons I'm helping, whether in a group setting or through webinars, is really saying, listen, let's first stop. We need to pause, and we need to look at self-care. We need to look at how do we cope and how do we care for ourselves first, because we can't control what's going to happen. I can only control me and my response at this time. So let's look at self-care and let's look at the challenges that I'm having with coping. And that's really the first step. And once we can do that, let's see what our next steps are going to be. What can we do right now that can help us, whether it is financially or emotionally? And also we tend to devalue social contact. We need that social contact. We're social beings. And so it's really about a thing and seeing how can I care for myself in a safe and secure way. But the first thing is to really stop and see, how am I doing? We don't do that. We just go. And we don't take the time to say, listen, I need to stop. I need to pause, and I need to realize, what do I need in this moment? What's happening? And then try to go forward. And I think that's something that everybody, regardless of age, we all need to really stop and ask ourselves, how am I doing and what do I need emotionally and psychologically first?
What you are talking about is something new, because first of all, and I'm not trying to be funny, even though sometimes people think that everything I say is, but people in my age group when you talk to yourself, that is like you are beginning to show signs of, you understand that you need help other ways. So when you talk about, talking to yourself and working out, what exactly am I feeling? You're beginning to talk about living mindfully, which is something that I discovered a couple years ago, and it's not part of the whole woohoo realm. It is very critical because you need to stop and take a pause and to find out, how am I in this moment? And then, more than how am I in this moment, why am I responding or reacting in this moment the way I am? If I lost my temper, why? But what was it about this whole episode that made me upset? I've learned a lot of things about myself going through that process. But then you also mentioned self-care. Perhaps you might want to explain a little further just what you mean by self-care, and give examples of that self-care.
Intentional actions to care for yourself. And I want to make that I want to repeat that. It's intentional. It isn't a by the way something. Oh, I rested today, so I'm caring for myself. So one of the things that I try to say to my clients, and I just want to put a pin here, I'm actually writing a journal on self-care to help through this process, because I'm realizing people don't know. And we like to say, do this, but you really don't know. And so the first thing is having non-negotiable time. And this is time that you set aside where you stop work, you stop whatever you're doing and say, listen, I need to stop and do something to care for myself. And it can be simple. And there are types of self-care, right? So there's physical self-care, like exercise, or taking a long shower after a long day, or what we call foot care. So, a little Epsom salt and water, or, going and buying something to just soothe your feet, for example. That's an example of self-care. Journaling is an example as well. And you set this non-negotiable time with yourself, this contract with yourself. Every day, I'm going to try to do something that is a barrier to the stresses of life. So we have the physical self-care where we're exercising or we're doing a little skincare or what's not. And then we go to emotional and psychological, the mindfulness. If you go on YouTube and you put in a body scan, some people are having difficulty sleeping. A nice body scan, it's a form of meditation, can also help. That is self-care as well. The journaling, going for a nice walk is a form of self-care. Or laughing, finding somebody, and that's part of social and emotional, finding somebody who makes you laugh and just calling that person and saying, listen, I just need a good laugh. And that's a form of self-care as well. Watching a show that makes you happy, and that's going into the realm of something called emotional regulation. So doing things that can lift your spirits, right? There's prayer and devotions, reading books or watching TED Talks or videos that help lift your spirit. It's about intentionally doing things in your day that make you happy. That's really what it's about.
For those who are, not technologically inclined, or those who might not have access to say YouTube and the internet and so on, this pandemic has really been hard on them, because being social animals, standing up at the front gate and chatting with your neighbors or whoever passed by, that is a no-no right now, because you've got to be careful. Part of that self-care is following the protocols and making sure that you remain safe. But for them, any suggestions? You mentioned reading. I know some people read the Bible and certainly find lots of passages in there that help them. And gardening, I've noticed a lot of people now taking up gardening, and not just plants and flowers and so on, but literally food. you know, but for them it's therapy. I kill plants, but you know, for them it's therapy.
Yes, in fact, in therapy, what I do is to make sure at the end I give my clients a self-care package. And in it would be tips, like things like, as you're saying, gardening and finding things that you like to do, finding things at home that you like to do, that as well could lift your spirits. If there's someone right now, there's a trend with drive-by, like baby showers and things like that. And yes, we may not be able to be close together, but if there is somebody who maybe, you know, you want to keep your distance from, which you should, how about keeping a distance and just giving a wave, and you have your mask on and you just say, I love you or something. We have, in this time, we really have to find new and creative ways to connect. And it's not easy, but it beats saying, I give up, I can't do anything, I'm on lockdown. But really, you know, finding this time to say, what is something creative that I can do for somebody to help. And there's something that you said at the beginning that I just want to reemphasize, and I say a lot in all the sessions I do, corporate and individual sessions. Be kind. Find a way just to be kind. Even random acts of kindness it's a way that you can connect with somebody. Even if you have a little package and you leave it outside and say, you know, this is for you, and there's no interaction, but you're still trying to be kind, you know, in a way, I love you. And also checking in on persons, yes, who may not be able to connect, but a call, or as I said, the little drive-by shout out, but making sure that you're safe and finding creative ways or different ways to connect with each other.
We are definitely going to go into the journaling aspect and so on a little later on with Brenda, but more than anything else, I said be kind because I've noticed, and I think you would have heard then when I said that I find that we're really very sharp in the way that we interact with each other. Perhaps being physically distanced and socially distanced, we are losing the way to interact with each other, the correct way to do so, and perhaps it's something that we're going to have to relearn, unfortunately, you know. But yes, if there's anything you take away from today, be kind. So we're going to take a quick break, Christa, and when we come back, I want to talk to you about your observations, your feelings, and how you overcame dealing with people who were suffering from COVID, and how did you, you know, maintain your own personal mental health. And we'll do that when we come back. We're chatting with Christa Delaney today, and she is a registered clinical psychologist. And we're talking about, I don't know, remaining mentally healthy, in troubled times. And it brought to mind a poem that my dad used to share with me. And as I get older, I really can't quote anything. I gotta go to source. So one of his favorite poets was Rudyard Kipling. And I'm sure if I start this, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, and if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. Just something about that, that just don't be what they say you are or what they think you are. And that just reminded me, if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. That was one of my favorites that my dad used to quote. Just don't be what they say or think you are. And coming out of that in this, be kind. Sorry, Christa, I go off on tangents sometimes. But what, in terms of what you were doing with, COVID patients and so on, what about that life then perhaps impacted you most? And how did you maintain your mental health?
Well, in the beginning, COVID was very new. And at that point, it was very new to Barbados. So at the point that I started, I did lean very much on Dr. Sue from the psychiatric hospital, who's doing a wonderful job. And she was my contact at the time to help. And at the beginning, it was scary. And for me, it is giving hope and helping people understand what they were going through. Because the type of challenge that we were having with COVID is not something I'd seen before. And it's the Harvard Business Review that actually came out and called it anticipatory grief, because we didn't know what it was. And it was really helping clients see, what exactly are you feeling, and understanding that this is scary, but we're going to get through it together, and we're going to help to calm the anxiety, and teaching them tools to cope, because we're just waiting and getting retested. Now today, we're in the thick of it. And what I will say is, when I started, I was actually pregnant, and then I had to take a break, of course, for maternity leave, and then I came back 3 months after. And so when I came back, it was not as, I don't want to say not as scary, but we saw more, and it was happening a lot. And so it was in our faces a lot more, and we kind of got accustomed to it. And so there was a change now in therapy. It was, let's see, research is out there, or dispelling myths sometimes, which is a big part of it now. And then really still helping clients to, because a couple months in, we're worried about our futures. Right now, it was just COVID. What's going to happen? Is something going to happen to me? But now it is the anxiety of dealing with everyday life, environment, plus now having to deal with COVID. And so I think it's really compacting how the approach to therapy. But a big part of it is helping people cope, helping people understand what's happening, and helping people as you said, realize that work is self-care. It's how you're caring for yourself and helping change that mask. Because I find, not to go off into this topic, but I find is we are equating wearing a mask to trust. And so if I take my mask off around you, it means I trust you. And that's not it. Because I keep my mask on when we're speaking, it's because I love you. And because I understand that I don't even know if I have it. So I'm going to protect you and protect myself. And of course, for me, I'm going to protect my family. My husband is a bad asthmatic. So we're like super cautious right now. And of course, I have a baby. So it's different. But the truth is, it's really about coping and understanding what's happening. As far as my mental health, I think I did take a break and I practiced what I. And so, of course, after having a baby is a big adjustment, and I needed my time. And so I did a lot of self-care, and that's why I practice it. That's why I'm writing a book on it, because I understand personally the value of intentional self-care. And so my goal is not only to live it, but to also teach it. But for me and many psychologists, we have to take care of ourselves. And mental health workers in general, those who are in the psychiatric hospital, those who are at QEH, we also need to pour some love and support into them and the medical fraternity as well, because our own self-care as health professionals is going to be important when we're treating our patients and our clients.
I've noticed, you mentioned patients and you mentioned self and so on. And then at the end, you mentioned the health professionals. And, the phrase physician heal thyself comes to mind. And I wonder if the medical fraternity is at all thinking about self-care, because from this side, it just looks like right now, their focus is on keeping us alive and well and safe, and themselves second. But it's like that analogy that they always give us when they talk about if a plane is going down, and the masks come down, you put it onto you first and then take care of the others. And I'm hoping that the physicians and the medical fraternity are also bearing that in mind, that for us to stay well and for us to stay safe, they have to remain well and they have to remain safe. Truthfully, I was looking at the one-on-one with Lisa Lord on Sunday with Dr. Ford, and I thought, oh my goodness, he looks so tired. I can't begin to imagine the weight of the world that he's carrying on those two shoulders. And we out here have to make it, not so hard on them and try at least to follow some of the protocols. But what happens in a situation where you as a psychologist are giving advice and your client is not heeding that advice, or even more, feeding you alternative, what was it that lady said? Alternative facts. It's got to be. But no, alternative opinions, alternative views. What happens in a situation then? How do you deal with that?
I think it's different for every client. And one of the things that as psychologists that we're trained to do is not necessarily to focus entirely on the behavior, but the why behind the behavior. And sometimes the reality of looking at COVID for what it is so scary. Some people rather embrace another view, which they're comfortable with. And that could just be their psychological response. And so sometimes understanding people can be very difficult. But the idea is, let's focus on what we know right now. masking is just to wear the mask when you're out, because I want you to protect yourself, and I want you to love yourself enough to protect yourself. Now, I do not get into conversations with vaccines. That's a personal choice. But the mask wearing for sure is something that we push. Now, for me personally, the persons that I've interacted with are okay with the masks, and they're good with maintaining the masks. But one thing that in the whole realm of being kind, as far as how we respond to people, is really to understand that there's sometimes a reason behind the behavior. Not for everybody. Yes, there's some people who like confusion, but there may be a reason behind the behavior, and just try to be understanding in a conversation. And so in my life, clients or friends or whoever, it's really to understand what's going on, why behind the behavior, and if I can help any information or point that information, then I'll do that. But I can't, beat somebody about the head and make them change their minds. All I can provide is understanding and facts, and really hope they heed to that.
When I said neither do I really don't have much more to say, because I have my own personal belief, and I have my own personal bubble and my own personal space. And I made that decision, as I shared with on another program on Face It and Fix It on Monday. I'm looking out for me and my family and those around me. So if you're not, let's do FaceTime and let's do Zoom, let's do the telephone, but let's not do the face-to-face or the physical being around me. That's just my decision. So I don't get into that at all. That's my take on it. However, when you talk about, though, the anger, and I keep on coming back to this, and you may wonder why, but it's because as a people person and in another life, in being in theater, I'm also a people watcher. So I observe humanity. I love to see certain personality traits and the way people handle things, their facial expressions and so on. And recently, when you look at people, yes, it's being blocked by a mask, but you have body language, and there's a frustration and an anger, and there's a way that we are interacting with each other. You notice someone, remind someone to give them their physical distance. Can you step back a little? And rather than just say, oh, I didn't realize, apologies, and step back, it's where did that come from? Why? It didn't call for that. It really didn't. It wasn't said to you in the sense of, man, you in my space, 1 minute. No, it wasn't. It was just, excuse me, could you just give me, and it was like, and I'm noticing that a lot, and it worries me. That's not who we are.
It's true, and the problem is, Peta, and this is part of a deeper conversation. We are not taught to express our emotions properly, and that's true. When we cry, I'd like to say culturally, it doesn't happen every time, but we're saying, especially for males, don't cry. If you're upset, what are you upset about? You have food, you have this. And we don't allow ourselves to feel emotions. So when we block the emotions, COVID has happened, we're locked in the house. It isn't the way it's supposed to be. I can't see my friends. Whatever else issues are happening, we have not processed those. So we're just building up and building up and building up. Then we're finally in the supermarket. And this lady I don't know has the audacity to tell me to step back. And then boom, we blow up. Because we have not learned how to deal with emotions, and the mindfulness we talked about. Sit and say, what am I feeling and what do I need? And part of it is because we ignore mental health as well, because mental health is just this gibberish that people talk, but we don't. COVID is telling us, no, it's real and it's in front of us, but we're not ready to confront it. But there are two sides to this. The first side is understanding people don't know how to regulate their emotions, and they need, and individually, we as individuals need to figure out how to do that, especially in these times. But the second thing is, how do we respond to that? And that's an important part, because if we go around in our life and we take on everything that happens, it's also going to affect our mental health. So there are times where I see situations and I say, well, this is not a me problem. This is, and when I say that, not to say I don't care, it's this is not a problem that I need to take on and invest emotional energy into. And it's not part of my priorities. And so it has happened to me. I've been in the supermarket and I've had somebody very close to me. As far as I know, the rule is when you're finished, then somebody else comes on. I've had a gentleman so close to me, I could feel his breath on me, right? And he has on a mask. That's just to show you. Too close. Like, personal space was not a thing. And he was rude when I asked him to step back. And I had to say, listen, I'm not comfortable and it's COVID. And he cussed and he carry on. And you know what I said, Pete? I said, listen, to have a wonderful day and I just want you to stay safe. And I walked because I didn't need to take that home. That's the other side of it. Diffusing the situation. Have a good day, sir, because I can't manage this right now. Pack up your groceries and go. So it's two sides to it as well.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to wrap up our chat. And when we come back, I want to take the last few minutes we have in being nosy. What are you going to tell your daughter about this episode years down the road? That should be interesting. And we'll do that when we come back. Thank you for joining us today on the Link Up. And the question that I asked Christa before we went to break was, what's she going to tell her little girl years down the road about this particular episode in our life that we're experiencing right now? What will you tell Carly?
First, I'll probably tell her, girl, this was something else. As I mentioned, I was pregnant during the pandemic, and then when she was born, another lockdown came right after. And so I think one of the things I will say to her personally is, it's a time where I realized my own strength as a person, but it reignited why I became a psychologist and the need to help people and the need for everybody to really focus on their mental health. I'd also, say to her that we can adjust and we can adapt. And as a people, we are more resilient than we realize. And I think those would be the messages for her, because time, I think all of us have realized, although we may not feel it right now, all of us have realized that we have survived some of our worst days, and that somehow we're still able to move and to try. And so the next part of that is to take care of your mental health. And more than anything, I think that this has taught me about the importance of mental wellness and realizing your strength.
There's still a stigma associated with it. Whenever you talk about mental wellness or mental health or whatever, there is still a stigma. People still think it hard to let other people know that they're feeling a little down or maybe a bit depressed. Mm-hmm. It has a negative connotation to it still.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think it's out of fear, and lots of times we don't understand it, right? Because every time you hear mental health or mental wellness, you think of mental illness, all right? And so all of us at some point have reached a point in our life where we've had a depressed feeling, not clinical depression, we've had a depressed feeling. And as I mentioned before, a big part of it is not being able to express our emotions as well. That's part of it. But our mental wellness is really about that check-in and making sure that you're okay and that you have the resources to go through life and thrive. Some of us are surviving life and we don't know that there's another side. And that other side is to thrive through life. And a big part of that is making sure that mentally we're well, that mentally we're able to cope and we have the resources for whatever life brings us, and we're not always struggling. And I think that once we start changing the conversation and realizing that all of us are thriving to mental wellness and we're thriving to good mental health, then we're going to start to see it differently. But it takes people, Peta, who talk about mental health and you're in the forefront to that narrative as well. And then we change it in our homes as well and in our friend group. And I think my generation has a big role to play in changing the theme for the youth forum for that is pull up, change the rhythm. And that's exactly what we need to do. Try to understand what mental wellness is about and change that conversation. Correct people sometimes if you need to, because at this juncture in our lives, especially with COVID, mental wellness has to be at the forefront. It has to be, because you may not get COVID, but everybody is experiencing some type of mental, I don't want to say challenge or mental side effects of COVID is probably the best way of saying it. So more than ever, our mental wellness has to be at the forefront.
Yeah, it's a really troubling time, but I remember quoting. I'm trying to remember who said it, but it was a quotation which said that adversity does not build character. It reveals it. And the revelations are sometimes quite scary. People who you think might know a little better, the character, and I would like to say, to use, as I had taught my child, my son, each moment is a teachable moment, what it shows you, and then the mindfulness that you talk about is also very helpful, because it gets you to understand, hopefully, why you are reacting the way you are, and if you so desire, to change it. But that change comes from you, and only if you think that it needs changing. So it's interesting times. we are all growing in some form or fashion, whether we like to think of it or not. Some with more gray hair during the past year and a bit, and others taking advantage of getting to know themselves and out now at, you know, walking and getting fit and taking more time to be quiet and just finding out what peace there may be in silence. You know, people are using it in different ways. So Christa, I would like to say thank you very much for sharing your time with us this morning. I didn't get an opportunity to talk to you about the Youth Forum because I know that this is a busy time for all of you young leaders, and just what, you know, the whole UNCTAD will mean to you all. But this is a perfect opportunity for the leaders, I think, to take, you know, a step back and just look at what they're doing and how what they are doing is impacting on everyone, young and old alike. At least we can only hope so. Yeah.
True. You know, Peter, thank you so much as well for having me on the show, and also putting mental wellness and mental health at the forefront. This is an important tool to reach people and to have this opportunity. I do, for young people who are watching, or if you could reach out to any young person, the UNCTAD Youth Forum is actually happening right now. Actually, today is, I think, and there are a host of really good resources for young people. And that's one of the things that have come out of COVID, is the access for those who have computers, the access to resources, and also taking advantage of those resources as well.
Can, of course, access their website. Just look up UNCTAD 15. And I see that one of our viewers here says you've got that right. I can't see, the clock is in my way, but I can't because of the clock. I'll go from here. My children saw that all this COVID-19 stuff was getting to me. They shot it down really fast, and sent me on a long vacation, which
Very
really
good.
helped. Well done.
And that's what we need.
Yes, good for your children, you know, to recognize it as well, and good for you, not fight it, to accept it and take that holiday. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Christa. Please stay safe. Hugs to the little one and to the hubby, you know, and continue to be out there putting the good work forward, and, you know, being on the front line of all of this. Stay safe.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Well, when we come back, we get an opportunity to face our fears. And by that, I mean, I did allude to it earlier. I did say that, you know, one of the things that we also are traversing at this time, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, is fear. And this is going to have like loss, death of a loved one, relationships, illness, you know, breakups at this time, perhaps loss of financial security. So we get an opportunity now to chat with a counseling psychologist, Brenda Roach, when we come back. taking a look at loss. And yes, I know that we might not see it as such, but I think our bodies and our emotions, our mind reacts to those situations like you would grieve over a loss of a job. That's like losing something really very special. And, you know, as people went into lockdown and they were then laid off, that loss after so many years of giving of yourself to a place and to people, that's a deep sense of loss which comes with a sense of betrayal and uncertainty and fear. Loss of a loved one for whatever reason, in terms of illness or in terms of a relationship, that is also loss, and the body responds to it as such. And there's a grieving process. How do you deal with all of that as a human being who might be untrained in that? How do you deal with it? Well, hopefully, at least I hope, that you try to get some sort of help from someone who can give you that help. Let's chat with Brenda Roach, who is a counselling psychologist, and nice to have you here with us, Brenda.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm having a difficulty hearing you. You're very, very low. Yeah. I don't know, that might be me rather than you, but I'm going to try and see if I can hear you. Let's talk about loss. Let's talk about it in light of a circumstance named COVID-19, where people are losing their jobs, you know, losing relationships because after lockdown and you can't get to point A to spend time with that individual and then get back home or whatever. That is also a sense of loss. And loss being a social animal, being able to spend time with your friends, to go out and have a dinner and a late drink or something. Most of that is loss.
It is correct. You're so right, Peta. It is loss. And that is exactly what everyone is experiencing right now, that loss, and not really knowing how to cope, how to deal with it, right? And I like that you've termed it as a loss, because that's exactly what it is, right? Many people, young people, have to grieve the loss of not being able to celebrate as they used to. Many of us have had to grieve the loss of not being able to be there with our family and our loved ones, right? As they pass away, because that is a normal way of us to cope, right?
Yes.
And so what we have to do, first of all, is acknowledge that this is exactly what is happening. I know that many of us would have seen on TV, maybe some TV shows you would have witnessed, and you've seen exactly the process that some of our loved ones go through when they're actually on their own and just with a doctor or a nurse, right? And we're not able to be there with them. Acknowledge exactly what it is that you are feeling within that moment. It may be fear, it may be frustration, anger. Repress those feelings. Let us sit with those uncomfortable feelings, because they are uncomfortable. I've had a lot of clients that say that it has been uncomfortable and they just want to get out of the feeling. But I think we have to get away from doing that. Stop repressing these emotions. And I'm glad that you had the clinical psychologist on before, and she was speaking about us knowing how to express these emotions enough, right? And so a lot of the times we tend to repress them, or we push them aside and get along with something else because we don't want to face them. And that is
why do we not want to raise our girls and our boys to handle loss the same way? Why do we seem to think that boys have to be tough and it's okay for a girl to cry, but if a child cries, you try to stop him? You know, why do we do that?
that is really socialization, right? And coming from a Caribbean perspective, we would have had everything else that went along with it. And during slave days, the men had to be tough. They could not be seen as weak, right? On the plantations, the men used to get pulled away and sent to different plantations at any point in time, and so they had to be tough because they were ripped away from their family, right? And I think that we have continued that trend even now. So we are still in that mode of, why are you, you're a man, you're supposed to be tough, you're not supposed to, right? I think gradually, I'd like to believe that is changing.
Yes.
That nowadays are raising their children to be a bit more emotionally aware, a bit more in tune with how they are feeling, girls. So I think that is a thing, but I think this part, that's how we've been socialized, that's how we've all been raised.
Right. And it's funny, you actually use the word weak in there, that it's seen to be weak when you cry. As opposed to seeing tears or emotions as a strength.
Correct. Because that's what we have been taught. Yeah, we've been taught that if you cry, that means that you're weak. Even in the playground as young children, right? If you see another young child crying, a lot of other children will probably make fun of that child, right? Look, he or she is crying. That's how we have been taught to think, that crying is a sign of weakness, when it's really not.
How do we change that though, Brenda? How do we change it?
We have to keep talking about it, which is what we're doing now. We have to keep talking about it. Keep normalizing the fact that crying is a sense of releasing that tension that we're holding on to, that we're internalizing. It's a way of externalizing the emotions that we are feeling. And we have to talk about that and keep talking about it. It's about comfortable with it, comfortable with the fact of crying. I myself love to cry, especially if I'm watching a movie or a TV series that brings up my emotions. I let it out because that is my way. They say crying is what, like a window to the soul, I think. Yeah.
I'm a weeper too. I you hear, but there she goes again. But no, I mean, and like puppies and kittens and things like that, that kind of mushy stuff. But I remember many moons ago it being described to me, and I'm trying to remember the person, but at the time, the why you were crying was that if you consider a pot with water and all these things are happening, filling the pot as it's there on the stove, that eventually, it has to release, it has to come boil over. But if it doesn't, so which do you prefer? Do you want the, slow release and dealing with it and releasing and so on, or do you want the pressure cooker, boom, to happen? And as a young person, that kind of made a whole lot of sense to me, that it was your body's way of, releasing those negative types of emotions, if they were negative at the time, a way of dealing with it, I
love it. Yeah, it's lovely, because that's exactly how we should be regulating our emotions. That slow release, each time you're releasing something, you're letting something go. That's why the kettle whistles, because it's trying to release a lot of heat out of it, right? And that's exactly how we, as opposed to just waiting and you keeping everything bottled up, keeping everything inside, and then we explode.
Yeah, I'm still trying to remember who it was. But when we were chatting with Christa paid a lot of attention to self-care. And the fact that we don't do that enough. Is that another Caribbean thing? That, something that is now coming in that yeah, you get a hairdo and your nails done and stuff, but that's not the type of care that I think she was talking about. So
correct, right?
Yeah.
Correct. When we talk about self-care, that's exactly what people think of. Getting my nails done, going and have a pedicure or a manicure, or getting my hair done. But that's not exactly what Christa was talking about. And I don't think we spend enough time doing that. I think COVID has pushed us into having to spend ourselves, and a lot of people were uncomfortable with that, right? Spending time with themselves, which was mind-blowing for me, because I like to spend time with myself. But self-care, and I know you alluded to journaling earlier.
Yes, we are going to talk about that actually, because I know that that's one of your ways of releasing, and that's something that I think that you don't necessarily have to be a writer, you know, but I just want to hear it from your side. But more time after the break. But for right now, yes, the self-care part, and I was saying to the others online that I tend to like to go to the sea. Yes, for exercise, but I also find it very calming. It's very relaxing, you know, to swim, to just enjoy nature. And therefore, when it's taken away, you know, when you have a curfew, and I remember when they used to honk the horn to tell us that the time was up for you to leave and to get out of the sea. It was like, oh man,
what is this?
All that you had achieved in that hour and a bit went with the honking of the horn, you know. So that was in it. So I hope we never get back to that. But it is so important that we get out and enjoy nature. So that is definitely one part of it. But let's look at loss, Brenda, when it comes to finances. Because now, you know, they don't stay in your account or your wallet very long. Lots of prices have gone up. Let's talk about how people then respond to that, you know, and how can you help them view that as something that's necessary at this time.
And that's really a good thing to look at, loss, especially as it relates to jobs. Because I found that a lot of people, I think most people, identify themselves through what they do, their jobs. People have been in jobs for 20, 30 years, and that has become their identity. And so with COVID, you have realized now that your job really isn't your identity, right? It is something that you go and you do, and there's nothing wrong with loving what you do. But there is also that self that you have to reclaim and be in touch with, right? Because losing a job can be very, very hard for males and for females alike, because both are households, right? And so then to come up with other solutions, other ways that they can provide for their families is of utmost importance, right? So when you lose a job, I would say, I can't tell you, well, stay at home for a couple of days and see how things go, because each of us are in our own, yes, we have the one big storm, which is COVID. But each of us are in our own boats trying to paddle and make our way, keep ourselves afloat, ourselves and our families, right? So you have to look at yourself and your family, your situation, and see where can you go with this. Okay, I have a job. What are my finances like? Do I have enough that can hold me and sustain my family for 3 months, a month, for 2 months? You have to actually look at the figures that you have in your bank account and see what can be done there. That's the first step. Once what you have and what you're working with, then the next thing would be to decide if, okay, do I need more help? Right? Is this too much for me to handle right now? Do I need more help? And of recent, well, especially with COVID, I've noticed more people have reached out to the resources that are available to them, whether it's through church communities, whether it's through the welfare department. People have begun utilizing those resources because they have realized that it is really too much for them to handle on their own. Some have reached out to family members to try to see how best they can assist each other. And that's really what we have to get back to, looking out for each other, looking out for each other as neighbors, right? That's what we used to do back in the day, way back when. We have to get back into the habit of doing that now, especially natural losses such as a job.
Right.
Right?
Okay. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at what Brenda mentioned, journaling, when we come back. We're chatting with counselling psychologist Brenda Roach today on the Link Up. And before the break, we mentioned journaling. Okay, now I know that you have all types of journals out there. I mean, the stationaries go crazy. You know, you can get the really big journals. You can get the ones with lines, you can get the ones which are blank paged, you can get the ones with dots. Brenda, which particular journal are you advocating for those who are now starting out, perhaps not going with the huge 11.5 by 8, whatever it is, or 8.5 by 11, the big one, little notepad, and by journaling, what do you mean, and how much, you know, in terms of word count, are you talking about?
All good questions, Peta. And I like that you mentioned before, remember you mentioned before, you don't have to be, right? No. Journaling is not about you having to write a book about yourself, right? So it all depends on where the person wants to start. And usually even in my clinic, I always encourage my clients to journal. And at first they look at me like, this is some strange thing. Why would you want me to do this? This is not something that I'm interested in. But you know what? When they start, they love it. So I'm going to put a little plug here because I actually have my journal with me. And so this is my journal, Gratitude, Happiness, and Celebration.
Wow, look at the size of it.
It's not that big. But what I encourage is maybe getting a guided journal. So for those who are now starting out, get something that's going to guide you along that. Right?
What's that?
So for instance, so if I'm looking at my journal, since I have it, mine is guided. So it will teach you, it will ask you certain things. It has things in it that you can document. So you see it's at the top, it starts out with an affirmation. Sorry, this is actually my journal for today. But it has an affirmation at the top, and then it has gratitude in it. It also has an accomplishments list, what you need to accomplish in any given day. It asks you about exercise. It asks you about water intake, and then it gives you some reflections towards the end of the evening, as well as things that you can celebrate.
All right, let's take this in little bits.
Okay.
First of all, you said at the top you have an affirmation. Correct. Now, for those who might not know what an affirmation is or are wondering what we are affirming and why is it important to do these things, let's start there.
Okay, awesome. So an affirmation is actually a process of affirming or encouraging yourself. Emotionally, you may be going through something challenging, and you positive affirm yourself. And this is something that I do for myself every single day, right? I look in the mirror and I look at myself and I say, you're a beautiful woman, you're a beautiful person, you're a beautiful individual, right? So you can come up with your own, but it's a way of positively of empowering yourself to
And
be
it's
all
positive.
that you can.
It's positive.
And it's positive.
Okay.
Yes, it's positive.
It's positive.
Yeah. So that's why I started out the journal with an affirmation at the top. Something that can empower you, something that can be used to guide you throughout your day. Yeah?
Yes.
And an affirmation is something that you repeat to yourself throughout the day. So you would say it in the morning, and it's not that you just say it and leave it there. It's something that you practice throughout the day. Because if you keep practicing it, you tend to start to believe it. Initially, when you start it, it's just going to be, okay, I'm just saying these words because I was told to say these words, right? But once you begin to practice it, you realize that you start to believe what you are affirming about yourself.
Repetition is good. We know this, and positive repetition is even better. So you are affirming that you are feeling good today, that you're confident today, that today is going to be a good day, that you're going to accomplish a lot today, perhaps that you're not going to allow people to be in control of your emotions today. Those are affirmations. Those are positive affirmations. The point, I think, where certain people who shall remain nameless break down is the repetition part. They might get through the morning, and they might get through the night, but somewhere in between there, they forget, that they're to be repeated. Okay. So I've written down repeated, repetition. So that's your affirmation. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten what was the other. Then you had gratitude?
I had gratitude. Your memory is good. Peta, you have a good memory.
Thank you. It's getting older though. This is why I am writing.
Yes, so gratitude.
Okay.
I always encourage people to practice gratitude. It's an important part of your day. It should be an important part of your day. Once you begin your day with gratitude, it helps to shape and shift your day into a more positive light, right? Gratitude is something that has always been a foundational part for me, and I always encourage it. I actually started a journey 2.5 years ago, really, with an app, and I haven't stopped. You know why? Because it has shaped who I am. Even though the day may be a long day, like I know today will be a long day, I am still grateful.
Right.
I have things throughout the day to be grateful for. So I always encourage people to try to identify 3 things, just 3 things that they can be grateful for in any given day. And it can be even that you are grateful for the day being a long day, because for some people, they don't have a purpose. They don't have a reason to, or they're not have purposes, because everyone should have a purpose, but they're not sure of what it is. And so you having a long day means that you have a purpose. You have something that you need to fulfill, right? So gratitude is always a part of that. So 3 things that you can be grateful for in any given day.
For life.
For life.
For how does my best friend talk about it now, being vertical? Yeah, she has that way of saying things. Try to give thanks that you're vertical. So all right, so we're vertical. And giving thanks, that one of the things I give thanks for in mine is that I have the opportunity to brighten someone's day. And that's not something that I take lightly. That is part of my purpose. And also to ensure that I leave the space a little better by being in it. Or at least I try. wherever possible. So I'd like to think that, when we talk about gratitude, that those are things that we give thanks for. But you say 3, so that doesn't then, this whole long list of things that you run out of, but 3 specific ones. And do you always have it near the top, or do you at night have things that you're grateful for that happen during that day?
And right, so I like that question. So it all depends on when the person wants to journal.
Okay.
So for me, I'm a morning person. So first thing in the morning, that's how I start my day, with the journaling. Some people prefer evening to night. So you're correct. Then you can think about, reflect on your day and figure out what happened during the day that you're grateful for. And I love that you mentioned in terms of leaving the space a little better than when you left it. Yeah, I love that you said that. And I find that you do, because even with we spoke probably twice or 3 times, short conversations, but they were all bright and uplifting, because if you didn't feel down talking to you, you felt bright and uplifting. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Good. My friends might not agree with you, however, because recently I've been feeling a bit down and been a bit of a sad sack. So it's also, I think, good to have people around you, your village, your tribe. I understand it's called these days.
Yes, the tribe.
Who, they can tell you exactly, okay, we understand, but let's do this now, or, change your mood, but are confident and sure enough in your friendship that they can say when, perhaps you're dwelling a little too bit on this, or but they have to be trusted, tried and true. Yes. So, I don't want you taking advice from people that are not tried and true, that have not been around for a long time and know you really, really well, who they can, when you're saying you're okay, can suss out that you're not. So I think it's also very critical to have good friends. And I've been blessed, and I am always having that in my gratitude list. I'm grateful for them. So yes.
Good.
But this is not about me. This is about the Link Up viewers. So, all right, you mentioned gratitude. Critical. You mentioned a word that I don't think, exercise. So, in this journal, do we have to write down that we read what? Did cardio for, how long is it? Is supposed to do cardio for? And we did cardio. What else are we supposed to do? Oh, yeah, right.
Okay, so for exercise, I just
for rescuing me.
When I say exercise, I mean just getting your body moving. Now, it does not mean that you have to do cardio. You don't have to go on an elliptical. You don't have to go on a spin bike. Okay. You can go for a walk. My husband and I have started going for walks every single morning. And a form of exercise, right? It's getting your body. It is helping you to change your mindset. It's helping you to take your mind off of things. Remember earlier you mentioned nature and going to the beach and swimming is exercise. Being in the water is exercise, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that is what I mean in terms of exercise. It's about getting your body moving. It does not necessarily mean that you have to go to a gym and lift weights.
So you can dance.
You can dance. Yes, you can dance.
Put on a good piece of music and just move.
Correct. Get your body moving. That's what we have to do, because with COVID, everybody has pretty much gone to a sedentary lifestyle.
Yes.
Kind of living. Everybody's just sitting down in front of your TV or in front of your computer. Your snack are there and everywhere. You're not really getting nothing.
Right. Okay, so exercise and movement. Just get your body moving. And you mentioned water.
So very important, isn't it?
Yep.
It is. It
Almost
is.
finished mine.
Nice. I forgot my water bottle home this morning, but that doesn't mean I have my water.
So this, how much is enough? I know that there, how many is 8-ounce glasses, they say?
Yes, that's what they usually say.
So,
that's what they say.
okay. And that is supposed to be the measuring thing that we do. Are you one of the people who say that it is better to have room temperature water as opposed to cold?
I am, because that's just how I like my water. I like my water at room temperature. You obviously don't. You like yours at cold fridge? Ah, okay. Well, if that works for you, I'm not a nutritionist. I am not sure, but for me, I like mine at room temperature.
That's something, thank you. I think I will have a nutritionist on and to tell us, because I don't like to give wrong information. I cannot do the room temperature thing. I'm sorry, especially if outside's really hot. You know, I've got to have water with a chill.
No, I mean, I can't stomach it like that. Or I would mix it. What I do is I would get from the pipe as well as mix in some cold. If I want it a little cooler, but regularly on a normal, it's all room temperature.
Okay, but 8-ounce glasses, that's what we are moving towards, because I don't know if people really and truthfully drink like 64 ounces of water a day. You know, but that's good to flush out everything. But how does it help you mentally?
Well, mentally, once you're hydrated, you're keeping hydrated. It means then that you're able to function better. You're dehydrated. If you with this heat in September, I swear. But if you are staying hydrated, it means that you're able to function at optimum capacity, especially mentally, right? Once we're in and we are dehydrated, we find that we are sluggish. We're not able to fire on all synapses. You know, our brain is not functioning as it should. But you find that once you are hydrated, then you're able to do the things that you should be doing. You're able to get up and you're able to move quicker. You're able to think a lot quicker. You know, all the things that you're able to do more efficiently once you're hydrated enough.
Okay. I think those were the things that you'd mentioned before I interrupted you. So what else was on your page?
Daily reflection. So I always like for people to reflect on their day. What went well today? What didn't go so well? And what can be changed for tomorrow? Reflections, I think that daily, we all have to get doing reflections on ourselves to see how we can improve who we are as individuals. We all need to aspire to be the best for ourselves, right? So with that comes reflection, and reflection should happen daily. So that was one of the things that I have in my daily reflections. I also celebrations, or you wanted to stop at reflections?
No, we're journaling, so celebrations. Is it like birthdays and anniversaries, or things that we did, you know, in the day that need celebrating?
So it can be birthdays, it can be anniversaries, but my main goal is each day to find something that we can celebrate.
Okay.
What happens during that I find that we don't spend time on the small things that we accomplish. We accomplish many different things each and every day that we do not take into account. And so that was my main goal, was what can I celebrate? So for me today, I can celebrate the fact that I get to have a conversation with you on the link up, right?
Nice, yes.
That is that's something I create.
Nice.
Celebrate the many collaborations that I have, because also at the bottom of my journal, I have a quote, and today's quote is actually by Janelle Chase Mears, who is another fellow.
Yes.
And so able to collaborate with my fellow professionals is another something to celebrate, because when I asked, she immediately jumped on board and said, yeah, hey, I can send you some quotes, I can send you some, and she did just that.
Nice. So this is a journal that you've created and you've put into a book form.
Yes,
And is this your personal journal, or is it available to anyone that we can, you know, buy
it's
it?
available
or
to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah, you can purchase it directly from me. I created it simply because it's something that I love to do. I love to journal, and I'm always buying other people's journals, and so I thought,
Right.
well, hey, why don't I make my own? And so that's how that.
Well, I have one, it's a bullet journal, and that's another form of journaling, because I just needed a journal that had in everything in my life in it. So bullet journaling also deals with your diary, so your daily diary, what's going to be happening, scheduling. It's also got space in there for my bills, you know, and that would be paid, their account numbers and things like that. And it's got all sorts of things. It has, yes, a gratitude page. It has a page for a diary, you know, and this is a blank book that I then draw up and create and put in. So I find that also kind of therapeutic. It might sound strange to people, why she wants to draw up a calendar when, you know, you can get a calendar and stick in it or something, but the whole thing of drawing the lines and writing it just makes me feel like if I'm into the moment. I know, weird. However,
not weird. It's absolutely correct.
no, I'm just saying it for the people that are finding it kind of crazy. And all sorts of quotations are in there that I like, you know, motivational ones, inspirational ones, and so on. My major fear is when I go, who will find them and then think, she wrote that, you know. It's like, so anyway, I haven't dealt with that yet, but I also found it in terms of revealing what goes on in here sometimes. And also said to me, because I've got little mood trackers, like today I found I was a bit more meh than I was upbeat. And then I'd be asking myself why. And then I was realizing that a lot was getting to me that I didn't realize. So, and that I drink enough water and so on. So but it's certainly not that big book that you have. So journaling doesn't have to be huge, but there are things within it which are critical reflections. And when she mentioned what went well, what didn't go well, and the better part of that is what can we change? And a lot of times what we can change, I have discovered, is your own personal attitude, or the way that you respond to what has happened to you in that day. So we're going to come back with Brenda. I know the time is flying by. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back. been a day of, I think, learning different ways that we can tackle, you know, this life that we're going through right now differently. Try new things, ways to make you feel better, perhaps ways to make you think differently, yes, but also to challenge yourself. Brenda has an interesting way of doing this with journaling. And when you read back sometimes what you've written, it can be an eye-opener. For me, I chose the bullet journal route, and that's bullet, B-U-L-L-E-T, journal route. Because with, first of all, my personality, and second of all the things that I have to do, I certainly cannot do the usual journal, which is to keep track, you know, every single day. So with a bullet journal, if you miss a day, that's fine. It's your journal, so don't stress over it. But Brenda, when you said celebrations, I liked that one. Celebrating each day and finding things that we can celebrate in each day. In the journal that I certainly was interested in, it also introduced challenges. And that was, what challenges did you meet in or face in that day? Or what challenges, you might do it at the end of each week rather than daily. What challenges did you face in your day? And then you said, how did you overcome those challenges? If you didn't overcome those challenges, why? And then there was also a section on what have I learned? You know, did I learn anything today? Or if you're doing it weekly, did I learn anything this week? And what have I learned? And then you take a look if it was positive or if it was negative. And how did I respond or react to what I learned? And it's not your way of filling time. It's your way of getting to know yourself, but it's also a way for you perhaps to make things a little better. You know, change the way that you react to certain things. And then there's also, like, water is very important, those 8-ounce glasses. Sleep is also very critical. You know, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough rest? That is also very vital. I think that one of the things that many people seem to forget is that your body and your brain need an opportunity to recharge and to regenerate. And so therefore you need to get adequate sleep. And yes, some people talk about 8 hours a day, some people talk about 6, some people talk about 5. But the benefits of sleep, and this is restorative sleep, this is not sleep that is interrupted in the middle of the night where you get up and then you get back into bed and you find it difficult to go back to sleep. This is sleep that when you know you hit the pillow and you then wake up nice and restored however many hours later. That is the restorative sleep that they're talking about. And within that process, your body has a chance to heal, your brain has an opportunity to rest and to also regenerate and to also recharge. So there are many different things you can put into your own personal journal. And the word personal means that it is yours. You know, it isn't for anybody else to see but you. So you can, yes, you can write down your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings. How are you feeling at this time? You know, and if you miss a day, don't worry about it. It's your journal. Even if you miss a week, heck, I missed last week because it was so busy, you know, so I just jotted down notes. But that's all right because it's your journal. And all we're trying to do today is to give you an opportunity to perhaps look at different ways of doing things. We mentioned exercise. There are some people for whom exercise is a chore, but it may be the type of exercise. What they want you to do, they're saying, is to keep moving. So swimming is moving. Slow walks, moving. You know, for those who are really active and can jog and that sort of thing, good for you. But perhaps put on a piece of music, you know, put on some RPB or something, and the younger ones, Stiffy and all of that, and whine, you know, and work up a sweat. That's also a good way to keep moving. Water. I really have to get that nutritionist in and see about which is best. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer, you know, what they call tap water, which is room temperature water? Or do you prefer your water slightly chilled? Or do you like it ice cold with nice blocks of ice in it? You know, which is it? So this is just a feel-good time that is necessary because it balances what is happening out there. You know, that you need to take the time. For yourself, our psychologist Christa Delaney, she spoke about self-care, and the spiritual is in there as well. Having faith, you know, the belief that things will be better and that there's someone there looking out for you. You only have to reach out for help. That is also very important. Gratitude, that whatever happens, you give thanks. And you don't have to make a big list. You can definitely take a look at perhaps 3 things for the day that you're grateful for. Today I'm grateful for the opportunity that the Link Up has restarted and that we get an opportunity to chat. And you know, I ask certain questions online sometimes, and you know, one of our particular Link Up viewers says that she misses some days with her journaling. But it is important that whatever we do find space. Find some space in this hectic world, and a world that's a little topsy-turvy sometimes, to make time for you. You are very important to this world, to your family, to your friends. So you have to take time to look out for you. You have to ensure that you stay safe so that you're around to assist those who might need help. And so therefore you follow those protocols. They keep you safe. They keep you somewhat protected. You know, the masks. Yes, and while there are so many, from designer ones to simple disposable ones, but they all need to be worn correctly. I don't need to tell you how you to wear the mask these days because it's like second nature now. But for those of you who need reminding, the masks are supposed to cover your nose as well as your mouth. So, yeah. Physical distancing. Step back a bit, you know, don't get into people's personal space. Wash your hands. Wash those hands. Sanitize those hands. especially when you're going into places like ATMs and so on. Please be very, very careful where you touch, what you touch. Sanitize those hands. And who knows, keep a journal. We might ask you to share a little bit of that journal, not any personal parts, I'm not that nosy, but, you know, to share perhaps some of the things you are grateful for. That would be nice. And I'm grateful for you for joining me today. Thank you to our guests, His Excellency Chad Blackman. Thank you to Christa Delaney, and thank you to Brenda Roach. And thank you for joining us on the first day of season 4 of the Link Up. Next week we get an opportunity to chat with Minister John King, Minister of Culture. And yes, we're going to be talking UNCTAD, but we're also going to be talking, you know, solutions and plans to getting the creative economy going again. Have a safe weekend. Bye-bye.